let's get back to Israel's divisive political battle over the judicial reforms. Earlier, I spoke with one of its key backers, lawmaker Simcha Rothman, chair of the Knesset's Constitution, Law, and Justice Committee. Simcha Rothman, thank you for joining us on I-24 News. The so-called reasonableness bill has passed its first reading. It now goes to committee, to your committee. Bills are often revised in the committee process. Are you open to revisions or changes in this bill? To take one example, there are those critics who say it should better define which elected officials it will apply to.
Of course, every hearing in the committee is open to changes. That's why we have hearings. But before we talk about the changes, we need to talk about what's in the bill. The bill is quite simple. It's trying to have the same standards that applies in the U.S. and any other country. The judges do not make the decisions instead of elected officials. They can critic and, of course, apply a scrutiny when you have issues of human rights. It's not a problem. We are open to it, and it's blessed even that the court will do it. They can apply scrutiny based on the procedure, the due process, and etc. They cannot. The judges cannot decide, not in the U.S., not in any other country, that the minister is not reasonable enough to make the decision and make the decision instead of him. That's an essential part of separation of powers. Courts deals with cases and controversies, not with policy and decision making. And that's what this law is all about. And that's why it shouldn't be controversial at all. And it's actually not, because Yair Lapid and Gideon Sa'ar, both from the opposition, spoke about this bill and said that this is important just a second before they were in the opposition. Now, of course, they're calling it the end of democracy, and Gideon Sa'ar even tried to forge his website and claim that it's not there, but thank God we have the Internet Archive. So the law itself says that the court cannot intervene, it cannot get into the decision-making process of the elected officials, of the government, the prime minister and ministers. It does not define any other elected officials that are in it. The mayors are not there. Other elected officials are not there, and they weren't there from the beginning. So I cannot take them out of the bill because they're not there to begin with.
Okay, I do want to point out the U.S. Supreme Court just overruled a policy decision by President Biden on forgiving student loans. So and though some may agree or not with that decision, but I do want to go on. It's true what you say, that there are those who have agreed with some aspect of it, but they're taking issue with the process and the speed at which it's moving through it. The fact that the talks, those compromise talks, have not gone on. You see the protests in the streets. Does that give you pause about the process by which this bill is being passed?
I think that the people that talk about the process are just don't know, either don't know what they're talking about, or they're just out there trying to deceive the public. This bill, the same text that almost without the changes, that was voted yesterday by a majority of 64 Knesset members in the plenum, was announced in January. People were talking about it in January. People came to the committee and spoke about it on January, and then in February. So to say this is a speed, it's like, I think that there are less than 40 words in the change in the law that we're talking about. I think it's the U.S. Constitution was debated less time than this small change that some critics, even people that came to the committee today, from, if you want, from the right wing of the politics, said it's too small. It's nothing. It's not doing anything. So we spoke about it since January.
Simcha, seeing the pictures in the streets, what's going on in the streets of Tel Aviv and elsewhere and at the airport, does that not give you pause about, even if you believe in the rightness of the substance of these reforms, does it not give you pause in the process and maybe call for
what we see?
Go on.
What we see on the streets. What we see on the streets is people that for almost half a year the police ignored their violence. Some of them, of course, not all the protesters are violent, and not all the protesters are breaking the law. And we know with polls that that was published in Channel 12, I think, that even people that support the demonstrations on Kaplan do not support blocking the airport or blocking the roads. But I'm talking about the people that are breaking the law, that for half a year we know that the police chief of police officer for Tel Aviv area decided for political reasons that he's allowing them to break the law without any consequences. So we see today those thousands of people, not a lot of people, but thousands is a strong, big enough number, I think, that block the roads illegally. They doesn't matter that the law is moderate. It doesn't matter that we invested in the process a lot. It doesn't matter that 64 Knesset members voted on it just yesterday. They're not protesting the bill. They are protesting democracy. They don't like the outcome of the elections. So what can you do? Will you make a pause in the fact that the right won the elections in Israel because people went into the Knesset yesterday and made a rerun for January 6th in Israel, trying to prevent a legal vote in the Knesset?
All right. Simcha Rothman, lawmaker, a member of parliament, thank you for joining us on I-24
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I also spoke today with Israel's former Attorney General and Vice President of the Supreme Court, Justice Elyakim Rubinstein, who has spoken out against the judicial reforms. Here's that. Justice Rubinstein, thank you for joining us on I-24 News. First, I do want to ask you about the so-called reasonableness bill that has passed its first reading. It seems on its way to becoming law. A bill that its supporters say removes a too vaguely defined power authority of the judiciary. They say even opponents of other elements of the judicial reforms support this in some form or another. What's your reaction to this bill?
Well, first of all, I want to say that for me, demonstrating, as I did even today, against our own government after more than 50 years in the public service is very traumatic. And this is my feeling in the last 6 months. And it's very depressing because I'm a great patriot of Israel, and I believe we have a fine judiciary which is internationally respected and internally very professional, very good quality. Nobody is perfect. No institution is perfect. Everybody may make mistakes. So the fact that it's now many ideas that would bring to its weakening here and abroad, including with all kinds of international pitches, is very, very sad. As far as this bill that came, that was voted on last night on the first reading, the meaning of it is, unfortunately, that it will, to a great extent, bring chaos or bring the government, give the government the ability to do things which are either illegal or extremely unreasonable, and that's the point. And by the way, the right terminology is extreme unreasonable decisions, because they say that illegal, they are not going to limit the code, but something that every decent human person would think that it's extremely unreasonable. Still, a government would decide, let's take an appointment, somebody who's totally unqualified, and there will be no way to bring it to any judicial check. And unlike checks and balances systems where you have, let's say if you take the U.S., you have the president and then you have Congress, and it's built within a checks and balances. Here in our system, the government controls the Knesset. So basically, it will become a one authority, one ruling body without necessary checks and balances, which shouldn't be the case. That's my approach.
Right. Let's get back to the protests for a second, because the current Attorney General is in conflict with the government about where that line of dissent falls, of free dissent. You know what it's like being in that position. What's your view about the protests and how far it's acceptable to go? And how do you feel about the Attorney General's stance versus the government?
Well, I think the Attorney General is an honest professional, and she does a job the way it should be run, and I think the attacks are inappropriate and mainly are aimed at curbing the protest. But nevertheless, in my personal view, there are limits. Even I'm saying that as a protester, I wouldn't support protesting in the airport, because there's really one airport, one for all practical purposes. And so besides the question of many people and the pressure there, it's in my view, this is not something that should be done. And I also don't think that things that are about to bring violence or that have a potential for that should be done. But other than that, the demonstrations are a sign of the freedom of expression and the right of demonstration, and they should be properly navigated. I think so far the police and the people say they didn't behave properly, the police and others, in the disengagement or with Ethiopian immigrants or with Haredi groups. What may have happened in the past may have happened in the past, and if something wrong happened, one should regret it. But that doesn't mean that now the police should be harsh and violent.
We'll have to leave it at that. Justice Rubinstein, thank you for joining us on I-24 News.
Thank you.